Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to attend this webinar. Our focus today, as you'll be well aware, is on the UK's post-24 budget and its implications for American expats. We'll get onto the topics in a few moments, but a quick introduction from DF Direct and we'll be right underway. This webinar today is brought to you by DF Direct, the low-cost, no-minimum investment platform designed specifically for US expats. Whether you're just starting out or looking to lower your investment fees, DF Direct is the ideal solution. It's perfect for those who don't need full financial planning, but still want your expert tools to grow their wealth. We make it seamless to fund your account or transfer your funds from your existing provider with step-by-step support along the way. What sets DF Direct apart? Well, for just 0.5% per annum and no additional trading fees, you gain access to Dunhill's trusted model portfolios. There are 6 different portfolios depending on how much volatility or risk you'd like, and that can suit every investment horizon. Moreover, ETFs used within our portfolio are compliant within both the UK and Europe, so you can invest with confidence from almost anywhere. If you have any questions or you're ready to get started, you're most welcome to email myself at ruben@df-direct.com, and I'll be more than happy to help or schedule a time for a discussion. So, to get our discussion underway today, we'll address 3 simple yet vital questions regarding the UK budget. Firstly, what are the overarching changes to the UK's budget? Second, does this radically change much for American expats? And lastly, how might this influence the way yourselves as American expats set up their finances? So let's dive right in. We'll address the first point, and I have my colleague here, Brian Dunhill, today, who will give us a rundown on a few of these points. And let's start at the top. What are the overarching summaries of the changes in the UK budget, Brian?
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Ruben, and welcome, everybody. Rachel Reeves' budget a couple months ago was the epitome of UK politics. She came out swinging. She proved Robin Williams saying of Parliament is just Congress with a 2-drink minimum to be true. She came out, attacked her Tory opposites for all the past misdeeds that they put through, and she basically raised taxes on all of the rest of us for their misdeeds in a simplified way of summarizing it. But it affected many people in many different ways. The first big way was national insurance contributions, what pays for the NHS and such, increased by 1.2% up to 15% for individuals. And that really starts next year on April 6th. So everybody will see a little bit of an increase in their NIC contributions. Or everybody that's employed is going to be getting hit with that. The big one that we're going to really concentrate on today were the capital gain increases. The 10% bracket is now 18%. The 20% bracket is up to 24%. And carried interest, that went from 10% to 28%. It can increase all the way up to 36% starting in April of 2026. So those are large increases, and that's why we really want to start to think about how we can go ahead and look at tax optimizing as much assets as possible to try to minimize the hurt of some of these new taxes. Inheritance tax will actually be extended of how long they're going to freeze these low levels. Low levels being that we only have 325,000 pounds of exemption. So if husband and wife each have their 325, they also can get an extra exemption for owning a primary house, which accounts for a husband and wife having £1 million of exemption. It was frozen all the way till 2028. Now it's getting extended till 2030. So don't expect higher limits on inheritance tax here in the UK until at least 2030. No inflation adjustment like we have in the United States. And some of those old exemptions, I think there's 92 different exemptions for estate tax. It's right there in the 90s. The best one is that you can marry a monarch. Monarchs are exempt from inheritance tax. So go look for a monarch if you want to avoid all inheritance tax. That one didn't get touched, but some of the ones that did get touched are farms. If you own agricultural land, now there's going to be a minimum inheritance tax. It's not the full the full inheritance tax limit. AIM stocks, which are smaller companies, are now going to be hit with some inheritance tax at a lower level, and pensions will be included. So essentially, some of the old strategies that we could use to avoid inheritance tax will now be succumbing to some lower limits. So it's not that they're horrendous, but it changes some of the planning. Stamp duties on additional homes go up from 3% to 5%. So if you're going to be buying an additional home, I hope you did it this last year instead of this next year. And the big one being the non-domicile taxpayer status is being replaced by a residency-based system. We won't go really in depth on that because it affects very few individuals. And if it does affect you, we'd rather have an individual consultation with you than anything else. The last one, which seemed to have gotten the most newspaper space, is the private schools. There will be now VAT charged on private schools. So just in case you're wanting to send your kids over to Eton with all the Monarch's kids, you will be paying tax on that. They no longer have charitable relief in any way, shape, or form. So across the board, we're seeing higher taxes in those ways.
Wonderful. So it sounds like there's a real host of things going on, many things to be cognizant of depending on your situation. But does this radically change much for American expats, Brian?
It brings about opportunities. The overarching infrastructure of how it's going to work for American expats still hasn't changed. We still have one of the best double taxation agreements between the two countries. The special relationship, it even includes taxes. And essentially, for the most part, you're going to pay the majority of your tax here in the UK. And you're either going to use the foreign earned income exclusion or foreign tax credits to minimize, if not go ahead and reduce down to zero your taxes owed in the United States. So there's going to be some opportunities to take advantage of, but essentially it doesn't change your tax. It just increases your tax in the UK, just like all the other 65 million Brits over here.
Wonderful. So how might this change, if at all, how an American expat would set up their finances with respect to being in the UK?
Well, I'm going to start on the strategy that involves Ruben and DF Direct, which is, first of all, you want to make sure that you take advantage of both systems. Anytime you have investments here in the UK as an American expat, you want to make sure that they're held in the United States, that they're US ETFs so that you don't end up owning PFICs, passive foreign investment companies. Four-letter acronyms are just like four-letter words. Your mama won't let you use them. Your tax man shouldn't let you use them. So make sure you keep your investments on the US side, but also make sure that they're HMRC compliant. His Majesty, as a revenue service, essentially will mandate what we can own and what will have an earned income tax bracket or the lower capital gains tax limits. So if something's not on the HMRC list, stay away from it. Now, essentially, that's for any taxable investment, or here in the UK, they call them GIAs, General Investment Accounts. But us as American expats, if we're using the credit system on our US taxes, we can still make an IRA contribution. Even if you're over the threshold for a Roth IRA contribution, if you're using the credit system, you can contribute to a traditional and backdoor that money into a Roth IRA. We have plenty of material that goes over these types of strategies, and this is something that you're able to do in the low-cost robo-advisor at DF Direct. So make sure you contact Ruben, and he'll walk you through exactly how to do it. You put your $7,000 in a traditional IRA. Since you didn't get a tax reduction on the US side because there was no tax owed, because the UK tax system is higher than the US, right away, you just go ahead and duck it right into the Roth IRA. Now you have an investment that grows tax-free for life and is accepted both in the UK or the US. If you're retiring someplace else, places like France or Belgium, Roth IRA, perfectly fine. If you're retiring to Germany or Spain, you might want to consider something different in the strategy, but all things to discuss. From that vantage point, getting the money in that structure means that amount of money, $7,000 if you're under, is it 50 or 55, Ruben? You're under 50, right? Essentially, he hasn't figured out the mute key, so I will repeat and then say it's 50.
Under 50, correct.
So if you're under 50, you can put $7,000 into your IRA each and every year and scoot it over to your Roth, growing tax-free. If you're over 50, you're able to do 8,000 US dollars. Now, that is just from the US vantage point. You're also able to do your full pension contribution here in the UK. And after not this last budget, but the budget before, that increase went all the way up to £60,000. And you can even backdate the last 3 years if you didn't maximize that £60,000. So let's just say you didn't do a corporate pension, but you were working the last 3 years. You can go ahead and put £180,000 inside of a UK corporate pension or a SIP. Now, there's a few little drawbacks in there in the effect that essentially you might have a little extra reporting on the US side, but it will grow tax deferred and 25% of it will come out tax free. So there's great advantages that it can continue to compound without these high capital gain taxes on them. So it's £60,000 in a UK pension. You get 7,000 or 8,000 US dollars in a US traditional or even better Roth IRA that you're able to put away and grow those tax free. Now we get to the more controversial side of things, which is the ISA, the individual savings account. Until this budget, we were of the mindset that you would save 20% on taxes in the UK, but then you'd be subject to US taxes if you owned a UK ISA, because it's not recognized. There's nothing about an ISA in the double taxation treaty. So you'd just be pushing your taxation and you'd only save 5%. And therefore, in most situations, not hugely attractive, but not unattractive. It's just a little bit of extra work to do so. Now, why it's a little bit less attractive is because of the rules behind an ISA. The UK will not allow us to buy any US equities, ETFs or funds in there. And on the US side, you naturally don't want to have any UK funds because you'll end up with those PFICs, passive foreign investment companies, i.e. 4-letter words. Your mom doesn't let you do them. Your tax accountant shouldn't let you do them either. Now, that basically leaves us with individual equities and individual bonds that we can buy in there, which means when we're buying 40 individual stocks and a handful of bonds, for the majority of individuals, you're going to end up in less of a diversified portfolio than you might be if you have one of our DF Direct portfolios. That doesn't mean that it's a horrible thing. If you have a larger portfolio made up of SIPs, IRAs, and other investments, this might be just one small slice, and sometimes it will diversify around that, i.e. higher net worth individuals still recommend doing those ISAs when you can, because you'll minimize the tax. But if you're just getting started and you have to decide between the three, I would definitely go SIPs and IRAs first before you get to ISAs, as long as you have enough money aside for goals between now and retirement. IRAs you can't touch until you're 59 and a half in the US. SIPs you can't touch until you're 55 here in the UK. Sometimes life happens before you're 55, so make sure you're planning on all your needs between then. So those portions should be either in cash accounts, in ISAs, or general investment accounts. But using these structures means that we can either tax optimize or reduce our taxes on 80,000 pounds per year, plus 7 to 8,000 US dollars per year, i.e., we always complain that it's so hard being an American expat. Here, you're getting privileges that a UK individual that has nothing to do with America doesn't get, and an American that's just in America doesn't get. We're double dipping.
Wonderful. That's very informative. So, in summary, while the UK's post-budget does introduce some challenges, American expats do still have the tools and strategies to navigate these changes effectively. I guess the key lies in proactive planning, staying informed about both the US and the UK tax system, as well as getting good and apt advice when the time comes to make sure you're planning accordingly. So, yeah, just to wrap things up, I'd like to thank everyone for their time today. If you have any questions or would like to discuss your specific circumstances, I'm here to help. My email again is ruben@df-direct.com, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. So let's open the floor to questions.
I'll ask the first question to you, Ruben. Which strategies are you able to do on DF Direct, and which ones do you have to actually engage with Dunhill Financial to do?
Absolutely. So on DF Direct, we currently offer individual brokerage accounts, Roth IRAs, and traditional IRAs. So we can go down those paths in terms of doing like the backdoor Roth strategy, which you discussed. If we're looking at things such as SIPs, then we would refer that to our wider Dunhill team, and we can explore options for you on different platforms that we do provide for as well. So we help with all of it. It's just a matter of which platform is best for your situations. So I've got a question here. Is a SIP treated as a foreign trust? Would you speak to that a little bit?
This is the golden question. Now, the foreign trust is essentially documents that need to be filed on the U.S. side. Doesn't necessarily mean any tax. It just is additional documentation to a cumbersome process of filing your U.S. taxes. Like I was saying with the double taxation agreement, a lot of people don't have any double taxation. It's just double reporting from that side. So it's another one of those. Democrats abroad just hosted a webinar a couple of weeks ago in which their speaker was speaking to a foreign trust not needing to be filed on a SIP. Now, I can't speak to whether that's correct or not. Their speaker is qualified in the right areas to be able to make that determination. It's something that you want to ask your tax representative that's filing your U.S. taxes. One thing that we can say is most of the time that we've seen things filed, a corporate pension doesn't file and a SIP does. So in other words, it might be beneficial to roll past corporate pensions into your new company plan instead of a SIP if your tax accountant is going to be filing that as a foreign trust, because otherwise you'll have to file it for the rest of time, i.e. ask the questions of your tax accountant before you roll everything over to a SIP.
And I've got another one here. I know you touched on ISAs briefly. Can they keep it? I know a lot of people have challenges with setting ISAs up when they move to the UK, or is it just something that generally better to avoid when moving here or living here compared to the alternatives?
Well, I think a lot of people, it's going to be beneficial for them to have it as long as they make sure they understand what they can have in there. Having a cash ISA, absolutely no problem. You will owe tax on the US side. Just because it's tax-free here on the UK side doesn't mean it's tax-free on the US side. So make sure that you report that on the US side. You're not going to get a 1099, but you are responsible for paying the tax on that, and you won't have a credit for it because it's tax-free on the UK side. Owning individual stocks, individual bonds, completely fine. Owning UK investments in there, not completely fine. You'll end up with PFICs. You will have a lot of pain when you exit those sell them and have to report them to the US. So stay away from any ISA that invests in UK funds. We haven't found any that will invest in US ETFs or US funds because the UK won't keep that in compliance. So you get two good options to keep compliant. We have our offering for ISAs directly through Morningstar, and so therefore you can buy it through us or any institutional partner that is able to buy our funds over there. So you don't necessarily have to work with us. And there are some other providers that actually offer ISAs. So don't be dissuaded from them. Just make sure you're quite informed from a tax vantage point.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. I think that nicely clarifies a few of the options that people have. I'll just wait a few more moments to see if any other questions drop in. But again, if you have any questions that come to you after our webinar, you know exactly where to find us. We'd be more than happy to help. So I think now would be a nice time to wrap up. Thank you again for joining myself and Brian today. Been a pleasure having you. I hope you found this webinar insightful and helpful with respect to how to navigate the UK budget announcement. But as always, we're here to help. If you have any questions, drop us a line and we'd love to continue the conversation. So have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ruben.